Good morning. I'm Tony Momberger with the Redlands Daily Facts, doing another installment of the Quasquicentennial video interview series. Today I'm here with a real Redlands treasure, Barbara Hauser, who was born in Redlands 97 years ago. And instead of being an expert on her research of what this town was like over the past 100 years, she remembers it. And so Barbara, thank you for joining us this morning. I think that this is really important because all of the things that you have as memories are the things that we don't want to lose. So to have you tell us on videotape what Redlands was like is going to keep it from being forgotten, I hope, forever. This will be archived at the Smiley Library. So thank you very much for joining us this morning. Tell me, your grandfather came here in 1909?
1909.
With your 19-year-old mother.
And the rest of the family, too. He had younger children as well, but my mother was 19.
And his last name was
Wynn.
Wynn, but not the Wynn of Wynn's Drugstore.
Not the same family.
Not the same family. Okay. You lived where?
Most of my childhood, I lived on Washington Street, just north of Ligonia Avenue, across the street from the Ligonia School, which was at that time on the corner of Orange and Ligonia.
So where the school district offices are now.
That's right.
Well, your house isn't still there.
Yes, it is.
It is still there.
Yes, it is. It's 1329 Washington Street.
Oh my gosh. And then you went to, I assume, Ligonia School.
I went across the street to Ligonia School.
Okay. And in the 20s, when you were a young girl,
Yes.
Redlands was a very different place.
Oh, very different.
First of all, I'm thinking there was no air conditioning.
Never. We didn't even know what air conditioning was.
What did you do?
Well, we were hot. I guess we didn't know any different. Many people in Redlands did own homes, cabins in the mountains, and beach homes, and a lot of families left Redlands in the summertime.
Okay. And you had, let's talk about some of the things that were different in Redlands then. Milk delivery, ice delivery.
Well, there were no supermarkets, and it was difficult for the housewives to get to the store. So many things were delivered to the homes. We had milk, which was delivered about every other day in glass bottles. We had bread. Bread man came about every day.
And were they from Redlands? Was this a bakery in town and a
yes,
dairy in
they,
town?
They were local. There was a vegetable man, a Chinese fellow that lived in Redlands and raised his own vegetables, and he had a cart that was pulled by a horse, and he had all these lovely fresh vegetables that he had grown on the back of his cart. And he had a shelter built over the back to keep the sun off the fresh vegetables. That was a very important delivery. The housewives would gather out in the street when they heard his bell ringing. He had a bell that he would ring to tell us he was in the neighborhood. So,
How did it work? Did everybody come at once, or did the housewives have to stay home all day in case the delivery was coming?
They had to stay home anyway. They didn't have cars. One car to a family was almost anybody ever had. And the housewives didn't get out very much they had many chores to keep them busy. And that's why they needed to have the groceries delivered to them.
Okay, when they did go around, Redlands had a electric car, trolley car system.
Trolley cars.
Where did that run?
The one closest to us was the one that came from San Bernardino in Los Angeles. We called it the Big Red Car, and it was larger than the local trolleys. But it came into Redlands from San Bernardino on San Bernardino Avenue, and then made a right turn on Orange Street, where it entered Redlands and came down Orange to the center of town. There were smaller trolley cars on the south side of Redlands that served the country club and Smiley Heights and Terracina.
What was Smiley Heights then?
Well, Smiley Heights was a park. The Smiley brothers had put in around their home, developed this lovely park that was open to the public for drives. Lots of beautiful views from the hillside on the south side of Redlands. They planted beautiful trees and shrubbery from all over the world. Lots of flower beds, fish ponds.
It was open to the public?
Yes. We used to drive up there for Sunday afternoon drives and enjoy the scenery, and we children would play in the summer houses that they built. They had these, the local people called them spoon holders, because the current slang language for lovers was spooning.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's really good. And that was you didn't know the Smiley brothers? No.
No.
They were before your time.
Before my time.
Okay. So who operated the park?
Well, there were other members, descendants of the brothers who lived there. One of the brothers' homes burned, I remember, and that was quite a tragedy.
Okay. Speaking of burning, let's move over to smudge pots. You probably remember smudging.
Oh my, yes.
Oh, tell me about that.
Well, I was familiar with smudging from the time I was very young until they substituted wind machines, other means of trying to protect the fruit.
And what was smudging?
Well, they had smudge pots in the orange grove. They emitted quite a lot of smoke, and I guess the idea was originally that maybe the smoke helped protect the oranges. They burned crude oil in them, and they were dirty.
Uh-huh.
The smoke, they created a dense smoke that surrounded the trees and the homes nearby. Everywhere that it was low and the wind didn't blow it away, they had terrible smudge smoke. It would get into the houses, seep through the windows. You couldn't keep it out. The curtains were black.
Oh my gosh.
Everything we touched was greasy and black.
And this happened only, I assume, when it froze.
That, of course, was the reason for lighting the pots, was to keep the temperature from getting too low.
Now, did you have to go out and light smudge pots as a child? Did you participate in that?
Not personally, no. The men and boys did that kind of work.
Okay. How did people know when it was time? Was there a siren or?
Yes, when there was a warning every night, a frost warning, and we always made a point of listening to the radio at 8 o'clock to hear what the forecast would be. There was a forecaster named Floyd Young who used to give the report. He'd list all of the orange growing areas, little towns, some of them we hardly ever knew about except they were on this list of the places that were named in the forecast, a long list of them. And we'd wait for Redlands to be mentioned. And well, everything stopped during this time. All over town, everybody, all the orange growers, which was a large portion of the town, they all were eager to know how dangerous it was going to be that night. And when it got down into the 20s, it was time to be alerted. If it got down to about 28 or so, the packing house managers would notify all of the growers, and the growers had already lined up a smudging crew that they could call, so they were expecting a phone call.
Could they call everybody at once? The phone system was different then, right? They had a party line?
No, they had to do them singly,
Did
one
they?
by one. And before they started the alerting, there was a siren on the top of the fire station down in the middle of town, and it was always turned on to warn the people that it was time to pay attention.
Okay, what am I forgetting to ask you about? What did you do for entertainment? What was here? The Opera House was here, and what?
The Wyatt Theater was a very important place for entertainment. We didn't have movies at first. The Fox Theater was built later. The Wyatt Theater was getting old by the time I was aware of it, and it was used more for movies than it was for operas. But they had previously had world-renowned singers and musicians who gave very outstanding programs.
And then Clock Auditorium was built. I know that was a high school facility, but did they allow community events there as well, or was it always?
Yes, after the the Wyatt Theater was condemned because it was considered unsafe, and it was torn down. And about that same time, the Clock Auditorium was built. I was in junior high school at that time. The auditorium pretty much took the place of the Wyatt. And then the Fox movie theater was built also about then. And it was built just at the end of the vaudeville era, and had a huge stage and dressing rooms to accommodate the vaudeville cast. But that didn't last very long, and the movies were the main attraction. So the stage part of the Fox Theater was later converted into another movie house, and so the Grove Theater was around the corner from the Fox. It was part of the same building, actually, but
Is that the other theater now that's on is it
Vine
Vine
Street.
Street? It was the Rainbow Theater in the 80s?
I think so.
I didn't know it was called the Grove Theater. Was it also a movie theater, or was it live
Yes,
theater?
yes, it was a movie theater. They showed a lot of movies there.
Okay. There were different places to eat and hang out. I know you had mentioned in a write-up that you did about chocolate, Triangle Chocolate, and there was a place where kids could go for root beer and.
Right. Downtown there, on the corner of Orange Street and Citrus, there was the Triangle Chocolate Shop. They sold candy and ice cream. And then there was a root beer stand. I think it was Reed and Bell root beer.
Uh-huh.
And I remember it especially because for children, the root beer was served in a glass beer stein type of mug, and they had little baby-sized mugs that were free for children, and that always impressed me.
Yeah. All right. You mentioned the parks. I know there's a story about your grandfather playing checkers in the park.
Oh, yes.
Tell me that story.
Well, that was a little later. There was a palm thatched roof that covered an area in Smiley Park. This was near where it's still there, the City Hall building.
Mm-hmm.
And people from the neighborhood especially would gather there, and especially elderly people who were retired, and they had games. They played croquet and checkers. And one time, my grandfather told me this story. He and another elderly gentleman, they knew each other casually but not by name, but they were playing checkers. And my grandfather was bragging a little bit about how he had become a great-grandfather that day for the first time, and he was quite proud of the fact. And the fellow that he was playing checkers with said he also was a great-grandfather for the first time. And it turned out that they were talking about the same child, who happened to be my oldest son.
It was your grandfather and your husband's grandfather?
My husband's grandfather.
Living in Redlands and had never met each other.
That's right.
Remarkable.
Yes, he was Frank Chamberlain. My grandfather was Fred Wynn.
Now, your husband was Joel Hauser.
That's right.
And he's somewhat of a celebrity in this town because of his, their petrified rocks that he collected?
He was a rock collector, and he collected lots of petrified wood. He got it from a cattle ranch that happened to be outside the boundaries of the National Forest, the Petrified Wood National Forest in Arizona. And at that time, the boundary lines were drawn on I can't think of the name. Well, along section lines of the that had already been surveyed, and they didn't necessarily go around the perimeter of the actual park, where the deposits of the petrified wood, and there was petrified wood outside the park that was available at that time.
How did he know it was there? Did he just happen upon it one day and that was
He-
off and running, or?
He was driving through the area and just became aware of it, and he stopped at this gas station and little curio shop that was outside the boundary of the National Forest, and he got acquainted with the owner there, made friends with him, and talked him into letting him take home some of the petrified wood that was on the surface, and he could trade it for material that he had collected closer to home, and they started a trading habit that continued for a number of years.
Wow.
He brought home literally tons of petrified wood.
And he dug it up himself? He excavated
That's right.
the wood? And I mean, your home is full of gorgeous, I'm so impressed with your fireplace hearth. And I've seen his work, or his work. He cut it and polished it himself, right?
That's right.
I've seen it in the museum. There's an exhibit there that's got his name, Joel Hauser, right there on the plaque.
He had to have a special large saw built so that he could handle the large pieces. And it was quite a story in itself.
All right. What am I forgetting to ask about?
There's so much. I don't remember what.
Well, 125 years into Redlands history, you've seen major changes.
That's for sure.
You've seen major changes. So, looking back on your childhood and comparing it to today, if you had, as a child, had a day in 2012, I mean, what are the differences that would really jump out at you?
Well, I couldn't imagine the traffic, the automobiles. We had some, but we didn't. They were in their infancy.
I bet you
more or less.
remember the first street light in town.
Yes, after a while, Redlands got enough cars to make it necessary to have a traffic signal downtown. And at the corner of State Street and Orange Street, which seemed to be the center of town, there was a semaphore type signal which had red and green blades that alternated for stop and go. And there were no lights connected with it, so they were very different from present day traffic signals.
Thank you very much this morning, Barbara. Very interesting stories, and I just appreciate you sharing your memories with us today.
Well, it's my pleasure.